Hey everybody, I'm John VanDuzer, partner with James Moore and Company, and I'm here with Nick Banks, Principal and Managing Director at Avison Young. And we're continuing our chat on the 2021 real estate trends as put out by Avison Young. So thank you, Nick, for sharing this, and really encourage you to visit the link and to read these trends and to really think about how they're affecting the real estate industry. Um, Catch our other video that we started where we covered a few of the trends, and we're going to cover a few more now. So trend number 2, Nick, was no place like home. So maybe tell us what that trend is.
Sure. Well, I'm glad to be here, John. It's good to see you. Yeah, so I think, if we all think back to March, many of us got word from our employers that, well, we're going to need to send everybody to work from home for a short period of time, and we expect to have everybody back soon. And so, what was originally thought would be a 2-week experiment where everybody works from home and we figure out how to get that done has lingered on and in some cases has become permanent remote work, for some employees. But I think for me personally, it was a big change of pace. I was used to a lot of business travel and in-person meetings and being on the road and really covering all of North Florida from my home here in Gainesville. And at first, I felt very, very closed in and kind of suffocated because I was used to being out and about and traveling and driving to different cities, not every day, but several times a week. Um, for me personally, I eventually settled into a rhythm where I was able to be productive at home, where I felt like I could get a lot done. And in some cases, I felt more productive at home because I wasn't spending as much time in the car, on the road, going from meeting to meeting. Everything in my life and a lot of people's lives shifted to Zoom or some other type of online meeting. So it's interesting the way the pendulum swung, where all of a sudden the door kind of closed and we all had to figure out how to work from home, work remotely. My gut is eventually that pendulum will swing somewhat back the other direction, but maybe not all the way back to where it was. Maybe not for some very long period of time, or in maybe some cases not ever. I saw a survey where Fortune 500 CEOs were interviewed and asked the question, when do you expect business travel to go back to the levels that we saw in 2019? Most of the respondents said never. So I
Yeah.
think there's this expectation that, the way we conduct meetings, the way we interact with people, some pieces of that will be changed, for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and I've had a very similar experience. I always joke and tell people 12 months ago I wouldn't have been caught dead on a webcam.
Right.
And now it is just a daily fact and a daily occurrence. I think Zoom is
Right.
much more trendy. I remember even you and I discussing maybe a year or two ago that you had a meeting and you said everybody needed to sit at their desk with their webcam on. That way it was
Right.
fair for the people that were working remotely. And
Yeah.
thinking you were very forward thinking back then because you were the early adopter on the Zoom meeting. Um, but now it's just a daily occurrence. I kind
True.
of so I see that the productiveness is a curiosity of mine. I think it's really I'm questioning, are we more productive at home and are we not? I have a 2-year-old at home, so I absolutely while he's fun to be around, he doesn't
Right.
value concentration. So there's a lot of variables there. Um, One curiosity I have, and I don't know if you've seen it or not, but have you seen any design changes when it comes to residential? I kind of have this vision in my head of people really beefing up that home office space.
Yeah, I think it's maybe too soon to tell, but I think a lot of people have that didn't have a designated workspace in their house have tried to find one or create one, or certainly the next time they move, that is something that is higher on their radar. It's somewhat common in new construction for the last couple of decades that a house would include, a study or a home office. Personally, we had turned our home office into a little living room area, and I had to turn it back into an office, about 6 months ago, and bring a desk back in there. Um, I talked to somebody today who said that, they had always questioned, like, why do we really need this home office? Neither one of us work from home, and it's just kind of a wasted room in our house. And now, my friend and his wife are kind of competing for who gets to work in the home office and who's stuck on the dining room, because they're both trying to figure out how to work from home now. So, I wouldn't be too surprised if, in some house designs, you see double home offices or just some different modified spaces that can be turned into workspaces or flex spaces. So I'm sure there will be some changes in design that we'll see in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so trend number 3, workplace experience. So this is kind of a natural progression of the working from home. So maybe tell us about this trend.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and you and I have talked about this before, but just the whole progression of how office space has changed over the last, 10, 15 years already, where the traditional office was, everybody had their own private enclosed office with a door. The pendulum on that swung into open offices, and a lot of companies went to that open concept. The pendulum was starting to swing back to some type of hybrid where people had an option, to work in a closed office some days, or collaborative space other days, or just more flexible type of workspaces. Now I think what companies, and look, this is by no means a one size fits all. Every company has their own unique needs. Teams of people work together in different ways. But what we're hearing a lot is that flexibility is key, and that what the expectation is that some element of flexible schedule, work from home, whatever you want to call it, will continue, and that the use of office space will be different now than it ever has been. And so instead of all the work being done at home, what we're hearing a lot of business leaders talk about is that the office will be a place for collaboration, sharing of ideas, bringing people together, socializing, culture building, those types of things. So the space needs are going to be very different, and more team-oriented, collaborative, collision type of spaces, instead of dedicated workspaces where this is my office, this is my desk, this is where I sit down and do all my work. So that is in evolution as we speak. A lot of businesses are not fully back operating in person yet, so a lot of this is conceptual, but I think the general understanding is we will all eventually come back to offices and workplaces that are very different than what we were used to.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like James Moore, we constantly survey our employees to kind of just get, we call it our pulse survey, just to get an understanding of where they're at, what they're feeling. And the results of that are, you have one group that says, I want to be at home exclusively. I have health concerns and really need to be home. You have another group that says, I really need to be in the office and I like being there every day and being connected. But then the majority are, hey, I really like this flexibility. I like the ability to come into the office and work a few days and then stay at home and work a few days. And I can shift around what I do and how I do things in order to optimize in that arrangement. And,
Right.
and we're finding that our employees really, really like that.
Right.
It's probably something now, as we're increasingly, this is becoming the new normal, understanding that, hey, there may be some employees that may not come back to the office even when it's not a health concern anymore.
Right.
Our recruiting has changed, and we're looking at more remote employees and really kind of looking at that. And that's just one trend for us as a firm. I'm kind of curious to see what design changes or office demand changes have you seen?
Well, I think the biggest thing is the shift away from private offices. That if we're going to have a flexible and at least somewhat remote-based workforce, then dedicating space to each individual is just not realistic.
Right.
Because if that person is only coming into the office 2 days a week, then that means for 3 days a week, you have unused office space that the company is paying rent for. And so, designing spaces that can be clean and functional and safe and productive, but not necessarily exclusive, I think that is going to be, something that we'll continue to see. And I agree with you. I mean, the flexibility piece of it seems to be something that a lot of people want. There are some people that they don't function as well in a non-office environment. They want to be at the office all day. That's where they feel most productive, and I get that. Other people though want to be able to balance. Well, look, I want to be home with my 2-year-old child as much as I can, but there are times when, for certain meetings where I want to make sure that I have some distraction-free time and am able to focus on what I need to get done. But
Yeah.
I think in general, people have become, almost every meeting, that we're on, there's a dog barking or a child screaming or the doorbell ringing and a package delivery. And, if everybody has, a year ago, you would have been embarrassed if your dog started barking in the background if you were on a call, because it sent a signal that you're working from home. Now everybody kind of understands it. It's leveled the playing field a little bit. We're all in the same boat and trying to work through those issues.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the trend number 4, portfolio metamorphosis. So it's taking it's a progression of, you have a bigger trend of working from home, and now you have kind of this trend of how is the design element of offices changing and the use of offices changing. So then how are companies looking at their portfolio of real estate and their needs for offices, and how is that changing?
Yeah, well, look, I can think of a few local examples. One of them is, I think you and I discussed, we recently sold Nationwide's big facility that they have here in Gainesville. And they had made a decision a couple of years ago that they were going to start phasing people out of that building and eventually close it. When the pandemic hit, that accelerated their decision because all of their workforce had to go remote immediately. And they made the decision to not move them back in, to sell the facility, and to maintain a remote only workforce with their local workforce here. So that's a good example. So Nationwide still employs the same number of people in Gainesville that they did, which was about 800 people, but they are all now 100% remote employees. So they've closed that facility down, and we sold that building on their behalf to UF Health, who needed more office space. So that worked out well. Other companies that were trying to figure out, I can think of a couple local examples that they were trying to figure out how much space they needed. They were at the end of a lease term, and rather than go move to a new space, they closed their office down. Their people are working remotely for now. And if they were in 20,000 square feet, maybe when they reopen, when they move everybody back in, maybe they'll be in 7,000 to 10,000 square feet. So it will be a reduction of space, but they do feel like they still need some type of physical space where their people can convene and collaborate and share ideas. From a culture building standpoint, that face-to-face interaction is just really necessary, and it's hard to recreate that virtually. So it's one thing to maintain a relationship and a culture and camaraderie and things like that over a virtual platform like Zoom or Skype or whatever it is. It's another thing to try to build that way. And so I think that the recognition of company leaders and knowing that they need to get people together physically to be able to build and maintain culture, I think that's a big driver for a lot of these decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm speaking for our firm. That is a daily discussion among management, is how are we intentional about our culture? And it's one of our prime things that we're focused on and trying to make sure we can capture, because that's going to be the key to the success of our company. So I think reading that trend, what was really interesting to me was the different strategies on how to have a real estate portfolio, and really that general shift from like the corporate headquarters, where you basically had a building and everybody was in it and everybody did that, to more of this hub type model. And I think you talked about that a little bit, where you have a hub and everybody can come in when they need to, but for the most part they're kind of out, right? Either in a more localized setting, or working remotely. And so I thought that was really fascinating when you look at that. And over time, I think office is really going to have some dynamics shifting as people are evaluating, what's the right number of square feet and the number of square feet per employee, and what's the strategy for the space. And so there's just so much brewing on the
Right.
office. And it's going to be an interesting few years to kind of see how it all shakes out and how the demand, finally settles on what is the next phase of how office is being used.
Right. Well, and increasingly we're seeing a decentralized home office where the C-suite people are maybe not all located in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's becoming increasingly common, where you might have the CEO in one location, the president in another location, the COO in another location. So they are the C-suite. Collectively, they are the home office, but they're working in different locations every day. And we're seeing that more and more. So it is much more of a decentralized type of movement with many companies.
Yeah. Well, that's all the time we have for this video. So thank you, Nick, for joining us and for sharing these trends with us.
Absolutely. Thanks, John. Enjoyed it.
And we're going to continue our discussion with our third and final video. So catch that coming soon.
To learn more about James Moore & Company's real estate accounting and business solutions, go to jmco.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our Real Estate Industry Update series to receive updates when new videos are released. If you'd like to be a guest, or if there's a topic you'd like to see covered on a future episode, contact us through our website or email us at info@jmco.com. You can also follow us on social media for more news as the landscape of real estate continues to rapidly evolve.